Hey, this is Tim, your host on the Ordinary Man podcast. Thanks so much for taking the journey and time with us as we grow to be extraordinary men in this ordinary world. I hope this episode encourages you to live out the purpose on your life. Now enjoy this month's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ordinary Man podcast. My name is Tim, your host, and I am so excited for this month's episode. We have the one and only First Lady of the house, my wife, Miss Emily Burgio. It is her birthday week, and I just was like, hey, why don't you join me on the podcast for this month's episode? If you're an ordinary man, or those listening and you're like, I thought this is the Ordinary Man podcast, well, you're hearing my voice, so hopefully that works out for you. But I just wanted to invite her on and just wanted to share our story, how we met, maybe even share some fun, embarrassing stories as we've been together for 5 years, and just kind of hopefully encourage you guys, encourage those that are listening, but also just have some time just to talk it out. And so before I introduce her, I just want to share a little bit about her. She is my better half, my best friend, the one that can eat a donut quicker than you can say donut. But also she is the mother of our 2 kids, Selah and Samuel, or in our terms that I've said before, our chicken nugget and chicken tender. She owns her own business and she crushes that. But also she just brings joy to every room as she walks in. I just want to welcome her. Let's all give a warm welcome to my wife, Miss Emily Burgio.
Well, shucks. Do I not get to hear my applause or anything?
Yeah, go Emily. So happy birthday. I love you. 29. It looks good on you.
Oh, thanks. I feel so old.
Yeah, you're old, you know. But yeah, today, just again, Emily, I just say thank you for being on. Our kids are actually in bed right now, and we're actually sitting at our daughter's little coloring table in the middle of our living room.
I think my chair is about to break.
Well, if it breaks, we're going to keep on rolling. But Emily, why don't you just share with those that are listening, the husbands, the fathers, the sons, maybe even some mothers, maybe listening, just share about who you are, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much said it all, but my name is Emily. I am the mother of Tim's 2 children. I am a wedding and family photographer, and we've been married for 5.5 years.
Heyo.
Yes, it has been a ride.
Yes, let's say. Pedal to the metal.
Between like 3 homes, 2 kids, 3 jobs?
3 jobs, moving a couple, pretty close to cross country.
Yes.
And now we're here.
Yes.
Yeah. And so why don't you just even share, what are you passionate about? And like kind of go from there of saying, like you're turning 29. What has the Lord been teaching you about to be 29? What is the Lord teaching you right now, even in the season of being a mother, but also supporting a husband and running a business all at the same time?
Gosh, that is a loaded question. I'm learning a lot about that I don't need to have it all together right now. And honestly, I probably will never have it all together because, I mean, if somebody has it all together, then they probably don't need the Lord, right? So
woof, that can preach.
Yes. So I'm really learning to lean on the Lord. My prayer list could go for days, but at the end of the day, he is still faithful. And so I'm just learning a lot about his faithfulness, even through our darkest hours. I mean, I've been through a lot of dark days in my life that I'm sure we'll get into later on in this podcast. But yeah, just really in the season of learning about being faithful and learning that God's promise does not have an expiration date.
That's good. That's good. And also, why don't you share with the listeners what you do basically every day, consistently for over 100 days. You've been in the gym working out at Burn.
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit about that? Why is the reason for that? Is it, yes, it's to work out, but is it for the community that you have, or what is that?
I was feeling pretty isolated being a stay-at-home mom And, after you have a couple of kids, you start to get a little insecure about what your body does to you, going through 2 different pregnancies. And they were vastly different. And after Samuel's pregnancy, you see, Selah was super tiny and I was really sick. But with Samuel, little fatty in my...
He is a chunk.
He's my little chunky boy. Well, I was getting pretty insecure about myself, but then also was, if we're getting pretty vulnerable, can I be pretty vulnerable on here? I mean, I was really,
you do you.
Yeah, I was really struggling with some postpartum depression and just really needed an excuse to get out of the house and to take a break from my babies. Love them so much, but needed some time to myself. And I had heard about Burn. You guessed it wrong. I actually heard about Burn first through my husband. This is a women's gym, basically. I mean, I think there's certain hours where they allow men to come in, but this is mainly a women's focused gym. And I heard it from Tim, who was having small group right next door in a coffee shop, and he was like, there are girls lining up at 4:55 in the morning waiting for these doors to open to work out. They're insane. And I was like, this sounds awesome.
Yes, and to clarify, our small group doesn't start at 4:55 a.m. It starts at 6, but I'm still sleeping hopefully by then. But yeah, I remember, just seeing these ladies line up or basically walk around this whole strip mall waiting for the doors to open to work out. And I was like, I wonder what the catch is here. And I introduced it to Emily and I was like, hey, there's this thing called Burn and it looks like it's a cool place to have community. And there's definitely some people that I know from the church that are there. And so you should try it out.
Yeah. And then we found out that some of our friends were going. And then that's when obviously I kept hearing it from my husband first, but it took hearing other friends that gave really good review. They had a lot of good things to say about it. And I could really tell results both mentally and physically in them. So I was like, okay, I need this. This is something that's missing in my life. I honestly never really worked out in my life. Besides, I was pretty active with my family. We went on hikes and, I tried every sport out there.
Yeah. What was your favorite sport that you tried?
I was on the bench, but I loved basketball.
Yes. So she crushed the bench in basketball. Let me tell you. Because why were you on the bench in basketball? Why don't you share that story?
Because my sister was better than me.
No, the story of you shooting at the wrong basketball goal.
I think that speaks for itself.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
For the wrong team.
Anyways, but also I know too that you're, this. I didn't know this until I was dating you and marrying you. We'll share about our story in a little bit, but you also have a black belt. It's double black belt in Taekwondo.
I do. It's a 2nd degree black belt. Thank you very much.
Sorry, my bad.
Yes. No one would ever believe me. Some people still don't believe me, but I will show you.
I didn't believe you at the very beginning, and then you showed me the board of all your belts, and I was like, okay then.
I still have every single belt. Yes, I have a 2nd degree black belt in karate. Haven't done a karate chop since I was like 10, but yes, at 10 years old, I received my 2nd degree black belt, and then I told my mom and dad I didn't feel girly enough. But I went through a really long phase. I think once I turned 10, and it probably lasted until I was like, gosh, out of the house. I was getting embarrassed really easily. And for some reason, I was embarrassed that I did karate because I thought I was supposed to do something girlier.
Gotcha. Well, I'm never going to say no to you because you will karate chop my throat real quickly. Just kidding. But hey, since we're on this topic, why don't we share, not the topic, but you know what I mean? Why don't you share, let's talk about how we met. Let's talk about the very beginning. I think, the 30,000 people that are listening to us each month, I'm just totally kidding. But why don't we just share how we met? You can go first, or we can just kind of go back and forth.
So if Tim was any other guy, I would have been broken up with or given red flags. Not red flags, but just, oh, weirdo. Okay, so I had just moved to Kansas City. I mean, just moved to Kansas City. And I was still trying to meet some friends and get myself grounded there. Well, this girl came up to me and we were in the same small group, but never really talked to each other. And she was like, "Hey, I am having a small and intimate wedding with about 50 people. And I know we haven't really talked, but I just feel like you're supposed to be at my wedding." And I was like, "Oh, okay. It sounds like I'm really supposed to be there if I've never talked to this girl and she wants me in this small intimate wedding." Weddings, I don't care if what your budget looks like. Weddings are not cheap. So I was really thankful. So I went not knowing really anyone. I knew like 2 people from church and that was about it. I mean, I had only been living in the city for like a couple of months. And we had been in 21 days of prayer and fasting. So I had been on the Daniel fast, haven't really eaten much, and I was starving. So cocktail hour comes, and then they pull out their donut table.
Hey,
I was like,
yo.
That's what I want. I'm breaking this fast today. It was definitely the maple donut that was catching my eye, and it was the Lord. So I went over and grabbed a donut, and of course, Tim...
I walk into the door, the smoke machine happens, everything slows down except for me. And she's like, "Oh, yeah." I'm just kidding.
He sees me as soon as I take a huge bite. I mean, I'm starving, so I take a huge bite of this maple donut. And of course, this is the time where Tim waits until after I take this bite to introduce himself.
Yep. You know it. And so I remember, here's my side of it. So I was across the room because I was invited to the wedding as well from the groom, which is crazy. So she was invited from the bride. I was invited from the groom. And I was talking to a friend there. And I remember looking across the way, and there was Emily grabbing this donut, but not just grabbing the donut. She was smiling from ear to ear, looking at this donut, trying to find the perfect bite. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And I just remember like just ignoring my friend and kind of looking at her. But for some reason, my feet were moving towards her and I was walking towards her and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm just going to go for it. And so I made it to where you're at. You were devouring this donut. But luckily you were talking to a friend, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel Bellamy, for introducing me to Emily. You were talking to Daniel and I was like, "Hey Daniel, what's up?" And he introduced me to you. And I put out my hand. I was like, "Pleased to meet you." But you had donut glaze all over that hand and I shook it and I was like, "All right." And then
basically wiped it on his pants afterwards. I was like, "Great. I'm making a great start to this handsome man."
Yes, I am handsome. And then after that, I asked you where you're from and you were like, "I'm from Alabama." And of course for me, I was like, "You mean Sweet Home Alabama?" And I started singing Sweet Home Alabama in front of everybody basically. And she looked at me and was like, "Okay." But that's how
he was weird.
Yeah. But that's how we met. We met over a donut at a wedding that the bride invited her to and the groom invited me to. And we met and we long distance dated for 7 months.
I think so. That sounds about right.
7 months, and you know, the rest is history.
Guys, we met, dated, got engaged, got married within a year.
Like, a year, people.
We just knew.
We just knew. It was great.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we're 5.5 years in, and there's challenges for sure. We can talk about that, but you know, there's challenges for sure. I call it the thriving, surviving phase with 2 kids under 3. And working full time. Emily has a business and just life as general. And so it's been fun.
I have over 100 unread messages. I'm really sorry, guys.
Yes, she is the worst about that, but it's okay. No judgment here. We'll pray about that later. But yeah. And so, yeah, that's how we met. And you know, we dated long distance. She was in Kansas City. I was in Springfield, in Missouri. We long distance dated. You know, it was the first time I really FaceTimed somebody when I dated, long distance dated. And so I remember I was sitting there with a piece of paper and questions written down, and Emily was.
He thought this was a job interview.
It was, and I passed, and so it was good, but yeah, and so it's been great ever since then. We're falling more in love with each other each day. There's days where we cry. There's days that we learn to say no, learn to say yes, but also learn to honor each other well. Hey listeners, did you know that there's a way to make a difference by drinking a cup of coffee? The Solace Cup is more than a coffee, but a mission to give drinking water to the world. This is where you and I can purchase a bag or bags of air-roasted coffee that takes the bulk profit of each bag sold and returns it back to the installation, maintenance, and rehabilitation of water wells around the world. So if you're interested in knowing more about the Solace Cup, you can go to www.solacecup.com or to our show notes to find out more on where to find them and support the mission of giving water to the world. Now back to this episode. You have a story. We all have stories to tell. Men, you all have stories. There's things in your life that you've walked through. There's things in your life that you are going to walk through. But those things equip you and get you to where you need to go. And I don't believe it's a mistake. I feel like the Lord has put that there, even if we don't know why or why it happened in that way. The Lord has placed that on you for a testimony and for a reason to share that story with somebody. And so, Emily, why don't you just share your story about your dad and your relationship with him?
Yeah, so my dad raised us in a Christian home. I've learned this basically my whole life. It always starts with the dad. And we were blessed with a really good dad. He raised us in church. We were fortunate to go to a private Christian school. And he taught us to pray. He taught us how to have a relationship with the Lord. I mean, my faith is because of my dad, and I just really, really honor him and look up to him. So when we had a great childhood, I mean, he was so much fun. We had a really good childhood until I was about 17 years old, and it just all turned upside down in a day. I found my sister had committed suicide. I grew up with two younger sisters. So it was me, Hannah, and then Olivia. Hannah, the middle sister, she had passed away, and it was a complete shock. We had no idea that, we literally had a perfect American dream, and she was struggling, and we had no idea. And this was back in 2012. I feel like suicide and mental health wasn't really talked about much back then. I feel like it was almost closer to 2020. I don't know when it started to gain more attention, but it did not have as much attention back then. So she didn't know to talk or reach out about it. So that was the worst day of my entire life. And then, so we go through that grieving process, and then literally less than a year or maybe a year, my dad gets, his cancer diagnosis, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They told him he had not much left. And we were blessed with a whole year with him, and then he passed away, and I was completely devastated. I mean, we all were. We were completely broken. And that's when the Lord just took everything and called me to ministry. So I ended up from losing both my dad and my sister back to back. And the Lord said, hey, I'm going to take this mess and I'm going to turn it to good. Good. And even though I'm not in full-time vocational ministry right now, I'm learning a lot about what ministry actually looks like. And it starts in the home.
Yeah.
I was able to go through Highlands College with Church of the Highlands, learned a whole lot about the ins and the outs of church ministry, and even got to experience ministry with, I moved to Kansas City for a church plant. And that was definitely one of the best and hardest experiences of my life. learned so much. And now I get to do ministry in my own home and raise my kids. And I have, a lot of experience to look back on. And, the Lord has proven his faithfulness then, and he's proving his faithfulness now. There's still things that I am recovering from those years, and things that are starting to come to the surface. When you have kids, a lot of things come up that you're like, oh, I did not know I was still dealing with that.
Yes, they do.
Yes. So yeah, that's my story. My story is healing from grief and loss, and honoring my dad's legacy.
Yeah. So good. Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that. And, as we talked earlier about how we met, seeing Emily across the room with the joy of a donut, but also just getting to know her, not knowing her story yet, but just saying, man, like, she is somebody that's full of confidence, full of joy, full of boldness. I would have never thought any of that happened in your life. But I know that was the Lord putting his peace over you, and the Lord using you in those moments of saying, hey, you're trusting the Lord through it all. And the Lord's going to comfort you in those moments when we don't understand how we cannot be comforted.
Yeah.
And so that's what attracted me to you as well, is not just your good looks, but just your smile and what the Lord has placed in you, even through that story, and the testimony the Lord has given you. And, I believe even maybe some men here that are listening, maybe some families that are listening, maybe some wives or mothers that are listening, there's somebody out there that's either dealing with those same situations or dealing with how do I walk this season out, that looks like that this season is just there's no end to it. And I feel like what you just talked about of saying like, hey, like, I'm just going to let the Lord do its thing and trust in him. I'm still walking through grief. I'm still walking through those moments, but I know the Lord has put peace over me through those moments.
Yeah.
Why don't you just share a little bit, how, from all that happening with your family to now, you shared a little bit about that, but like, what has been your rock per se? What has been keeping you afloat?
Yeah. I don't mean to sound super cliche, but definitely the Lord through worship. I will literally just get down on my knees and just worship. I used to sit in my little Tiguan, my Volkswagen Tiguan, RIP, and would just let it all out to blasted worship music. I think we have to be careful and mindful of what we're pouring ourselves into. And so I had to go through a season where I think for about 6 months, I didn't really watch anything on TV or listen to anything secular, not because I thought it was like, oh, that is like shameful, sinful, or anything like that. I mean, even classic songs, like I needed to just hear from the Lord.
Yeah.
And to just escape.
You almost needed like a reset.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was a reset. And that's what it took to obviously, it doesn't fix things overnight. In fact, my least favorite thing, the thing I hated hearing the most when people were trying to give advice, don't try to give advice to someone who's grieving. Just love them. Yeah.
Love them and just listen.
Yes. But someone was like, oh, time will heal. You just give it some time. Give it some time. No, time is your enemy. It comes and goes. Grief is a weird thing. Grief comes knocking on the door uninvited just all the time. I mean, I could wake up tomorrow and just cry as if it happened yesterday. But then there are days where I do have good days. I've been walking with a friend who just lost her mom, and it's kind of brought back to some feelings that I went through with my dad. So it's a lot of, it's revisiting things, but in a way where I can empathize with her. And it's been honestly incredibly beautiful, because what I've been through, it allows me to walk next to people who go through the same thing. And it really, I love how it has rebuilt our friendship. We had lost touch for a little while, and it just, I don't know, there's something valuable about two people who connect through hardship.
So good. And I just love, what you're saying, and like your testimony is going to help somebody else heal. It's, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And it's the moments of just saying yes to the Lord, even in the moments when you don't want to share it, even in the moments when, you might be going somewhere, but the Holy Spirit says, hey, stop. There's somebody to your left or somebody to your right, or there's somebody that's needing some money. There's those moments in our lives that the Lord is going to use us and test us. And kind of see where we're at in life with him. Are we really trusting him? Are we really have a relationship with him that we will stop everything to go to this person because he's telling us to? It's obedience. Yeah. And you sharing that story with the friend that lost her dad, or her mom, there's that connection there, saying, hey, I understand what you're going through, but you didn't say that. You said, hey, let me share what the story that the Lord has gone through me and walked me through.
Yeah. Everybody grieves differently. So I never like to even say I understand, because I probably don't, because it was probably more, you never know how someone else grieves. Me, my mom, and my other sister, we grieved vastly different. Yeah. I like to spitfire. I will tell you exactly what I'm feeling when I'm feeling it. And they like to hold it in for a little bit and then wait for the right time to just spill their guts. So I won't ever truly understand how another person's feeling, but I know, like, hey, this is what the Lord is teaching me. Maybe this can help. Yeah. But the biggest thing that I love to tell people is you are not alone. No matter what the situation is, if you are feeling something, somebody else has felt that too. You don't have a unique feeling, if that makes sense. You might be, God has made us all unique, but our emotions that we go through, those are not unique. Somebody else has felt that too. And so you're looking to find people who have those Me Too moments.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So good. As we're going to a close here in a little bit, I just wanted to kind of just give you the floor, and just maybe even share, like, for those, you talked about legacy with your dad. There's men listening that are fathers, husbands, sons. What does that look like, to leave legacy? As you're the daughter of your dad that passed, like, he left a legacy. What can you encourage the men that are listening that maybe are fathers, one day want to be fathers, or just living a life of just maybe in college is, how can they be a legacy to others?
Being a team player with your spouse or your family. Sometimes, with me and Tim could come home from a long work day and he could be like, hey, babe, I am not feeling it right now. Like, he could be just worn out. And so there are going to be some days where I pick up after him, after his duties. And then there's going to be days where he comes home. I'm like, take the kids, take the house. I'm getting out of here. I need you to take over. All you
say as a man is say, yes, ma'am.
And then there are going to be days where he comes home and he's like, okay, you've got baths, I've got cleaning, or vice versa. And it's a relay race. There's some things that, your partner is going to do more obstacles than the other, but you're still going to get there.
Yeah. So good. And I think just even communication between a spouse, and just, making sure we're on the same page. We're working, like, let's be real, we're working on that right now. Just learning how to communicate. When the kids are in bed, we're finally be able to eat dinner and we can talk and just kind of figure out what the calendar looks like, and I would just say for those that are listening, find a healthy balance, find what works, find, what doesn't work, and don't do that. But just in those moments too, like, just slow down. It's
talk.
okay. talk. I'm learning to talk as
Put the
well.
screens away for a
Yes.
little bit, even if it's for just 20 minutes, 10
Yes.
minutes, just talk. You don't have to talk about work. Leave your junk at the door. Just talk.
Yeah.
Get some table talk cards, whatever those are called.
Table talk cards.
Yeah. Table topics.
You talk at a table with a card.
Yep.
Table talk cards.
Topic cards.
Yep.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. So leave it all at before you come into the house. Leave it all outside of the door. Let this be a holy place. Let this be a sacred place. Let this be a pure place for you and your family and your wife and your kids, just to relax and just to celebrate the wins of the day. We do something, not all the time, but we try to at the dinner table with our kids. It's called
High Low
and Buffalo. I heard that on another podcast that they do that. I think it was
Levi Lesko?
Levi Lesko,
Yeah.
We Are the Leskos. But they do that with their family. And so what that is why don't you share what that is about? High Low Buffalo.
Yeah, High Low Buffalo. So the high of your day, so today the highlight of my day was taking the kids to the park with our small group. It was so much fun. And then you share a low of your day of like, hey, dinner time was pretty rough tonight. The kids didn't want to eat their food. They were throwing food at each other and making a lot of screaming noises, and I was overstimulated. And then a crazy buffalo. And you could tell something crazy you saw that day, like, I don't know, police chase or something.
Yeah, here's a crazy thing I saw today. It's kind of weird, kind of random, but I was driving to work and there was a truck by me. Here's my crazy buffalo. Let's just be real. And on the side of the truck, it says, "I will clean your poop."
What?
And I'm looking at it, and it's a business that goes and cleans up your dog's poop in your backyard.
People are so lazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's free manure. Like, it helps your grass grow, but that's my crazy buffalo for today.
A business that cleans poop. They made that to a business.
Yeah, it stinks, doesn't it? But yeah, and so we do that every once in a while just to kind of let things out, but also just kind of celebrate the highs and, laugh about the lows sometimes, but also just laugh about the crazy things of the crazy buffalo.
I don't know. Sometimes I cry about those lows.
Yeah.
Those lows can be pretty low.
Low places. But hey, as we close, Emily, first of all, I just want to say thank you for being on the Ordinary Man podcast. It's your debut, and it's your birthday week, and you're 29. What's been the best part so far of being 29?
Oh. I'm not 30 yet.
You're not 30. There it is.
That's the best part.
That's
I'm not
the best
30
part.
yet.
The 30s is the best. Get ready. It's going to be so good. But I just want to say happy birthday. I hope you feel loved and honored, not just from this podcast, but just those that are being celebrated around you for your birthday week, your birthday month, your birthday day. Cannot wait for the kids to celebrate as well with you. It's going to be fun. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a lot of tears, but we're going to make that dang breakfast. If it's burnt or not.
Yes.
But Emily, why don't you just pray for the listeners real quick? And even just maybe if you wanted to share one more encouraging thing to the men that are listening, to the moms that are listening, to the fathers that are listening, why don't you go for it?
Oh, no pressure or anything. I guess know that you're not alone, and if you have at least just one person to talk to, even if it's not your spouse, I mean, yes, please talk to your spouse. That's not what I'm saying. Please have a friend, just one, that knows the good, bad, and the ugly about you. And honestly, that's just what makes life better, is having people that will listen to you, and vice versa. Listen to someone today. Ask someone how they're really doing. Like, don't just ask someone like, "Hey, how's your day?" "Oh, good," and then just leave it there. Like, let's get past that surface level and dig deep. Get to know somebody. But Father, I just thank you so much for all the listeners. I thank you for my husband. Thank you for the dreams that you've placed on his heart. Thank you for this podcast that he has created. And I just pray for just blessings and favor over this podcast and over everyone that is listening. I pray for the families that the men represent, that or women that could be listening. Lord, that you would just bring unity and that you would teach them about your faithfulness. So, Father, whatever they're going through today, I pray that they will see that you see them, you know them, and you still love them, God. And I just pray that they will see your faithfulness. They will see your goodness. Lord, that your mercies are new every morning. And I just pray for just peace over every home. And we just pray for courage for those who need to talk to someone about just anything. We just pray for friendships to grow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen. Again, happy birthday, Emily, and just thankful that you got to be on this month's episode of the podcast. And thank you for those that are listening to this month's episode on the Ordinary Man Podcast. Feel free to like and follow us on Instagram at the Ordinary Man Podcast or online at theordinarymanpodcast.com. We may live as ordinary in the world's eyes, but when we have Jesus in our lives, we can live to be extraordinary. We'll see you next month on the Ordinary Man Podcast. Bingo, bango, star, spango.